Welcome to my channel. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stayed silent because you could not express yourself in English? Have you ever watched someone speak confidently and wished that could be you? What if I told you that English being your second language is not holding you back? In fact, it could become your biggest advantage in life. Today, I'm going to share a journey that changed everything. A journey from confusion and self-doubt to confidence and opportunity. If you have ever struggled with English, felt embarrassed, or thought fluency was impossible, keep watching. Because what you are about to hear might completely change the way you see your English learning journey forever. Chapter 1. I still remember the day I realized that English was much more than just a language. Before that day, I thought English was only a school subject. It was something I studied to pass exams. I memorized grammar rules. I learned vocabulary lists. I completed exercises. But I never truly understood why English was important. To me, it was just another subject like math or science. I never imagined that one day English would become one of the most important skills in my life. Everything changed because of one simple moment. At that time, I was working hard to build a better future for myself. Every day, I watched videos online about successful people. Many of them worked for international companies. Many of them traveled around the world. Many of them had opportunities that seemed impossible for me. One thing connected all of them. They could speak English. At first, I ignored it. I told myself English was not necessary. I said to myself that skills were more important than language. But deep inside, I knew something was missing. Then one evening, something happened that completely changed my thinking. I was watching a live online event. People from different countries were discussing ideas, sharing experiences, and asking questions. Thousands of people were watching. I was excited because the topic was something I loved. I wanted to participate. I wanted to ask a question. I wanted to join the conversation. But there was a problem. The entire event was in English. As I listened, I could understand a few words here and there, but most of the conversation sounded too fast. I wanted to speak, but I was afraid. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating fast. I typed a question several times but deleted it again and again because I was worried about making mistakes. Then I watched other people confidently speaking English. Some of them were not native speakers. Some of them had accents. Some of them made mistakes. But they were speaking. They were communicating. They were participating. They were learning and growing. And I was sitting there silently. That moment hurt more than I can explain. Not because anyone laughed at me. Not because anyone criticized me. It hurt because I realized that I was limiting myself. The opportunity was right in front of me, but I could not take it because I lacked confidence in English. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about what had happened. I started asking myself difficult questions. How many opportunities had I already missed because of English? How many opportunities would I miss in the future if nothing changed? The next morning, I opened my phone and started searching for information. I discovered something surprising. Millions of people around the world were learning English as a second language. They were doctors, engineers, students, business owners, and ordinary people. Many of them had started from zero. Many of them had struggled just like me, yet they had succeeded. The more stories I read, the more motivated I became. I realized that English was not just about speaking another language. It was about opening doors. It was about connecting with people. It was about accessing knowledge. It was about creating opportunities. Suddenly, English felt different. It was no longer a boring school subject. It became a bridge between who I was and who I wanted to become. Of course, the journey was not easy. Like many beginners, I felt frustrated. Sometimes I learned new words and forgot them the next day. Sometimes I listened to English and understood almost nothing. Sometimes I compared myself to fluent speakers and felt discouraged. There were days when I wanted to quit. There were days when I wondered if I would ever improve. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered that online event. I remembered how it felt to stay silent when I wanted to speak. I promised myself that I would never feel that way again. Slowly, I started understanding something important. Every fluent English speaker was once a beginner. Every confident speaker once struggled with simple sentences. Nobody starts fluent. Nobody starts perfect. Progress happens one step at a time. One word becomes one sentence. One sentence becomes one conversation. One conversation becomes confidence. That realization changed everything. I stopped worrying about being perfect. Instead, I focused on improving a little every day. And that was the day I truly understood that English was not just another language. It was a tool that could change my future. But what I discovered next surprised me even more. I learned that English being your second language is not a weakness at all. In fact, it can become one of your greatest strengths. Chapter 2. After realizing that English was much more than just a language, I started looking at my journey differently. But then I discovered something that completely changed the way I thought about learning English. For years, I believed that having English as my second language was a disadvantage. I thought native speakers were lucky and people like me would always be behind. Every time I heard someone speaking fluent English, I felt a little jealous. I would think, they have it easy. They grew up speaking English. Of course, they sound confident. But one day I came across a story that changed my perspective forever. It was the story of a successful businessman who spoke 3 languages. During an interview, someone asked him what his biggest advantage was. I expected him to talk about money, education, or experience. Instead, he smiled and said, "My biggest advantage is that I learned English as a second language." I was shocked. How could something I saw as a weakness be considered an advantage? That answer stayed in my mind for days. The more I researched, the more I discovered something amazing. Many successful people around the world learned English as a second language. They were not born speaking it. They struggled. They made mistakes. They felt embarrassed. But they kept going. And because they learned another language, they developed skills that helped them succeed in many areas of life. That was when I realized something important. Learning English is not just about learning words. It is about training your brain. Every time you learn a new phrase, your brain becomes stronger. Every time you understand a conversation, your confidence grows. Every time you speak, despite being nervous, you become more courageous. Suddenly, I stopped seeing English as a difficult subject. I started seeing it as a challenge that could make me stronger. Then something happened that made me believe this even more. One evening, I joined an online discussion group. People from different countries were there. Some were from Brazil. Some were from Japan. Some were from Turkey. Some were from Germany. We all had one thing in common. English was not our first language. At first, everyone was nervous. People made grammar mistakes. Some people paused while speaking. Some struggled to find words. But something incredible happened. Nobody cared. Nobody laughed. Nobody judged anyone. We were all learning together. We were all helping each other. And for the first time, I realized that speaking perfect English was not the goal. Communication was the goal. That meeting changed my confidence. I noticed that many people who spoke English as a second language were actually more determined than native speakers. They appreciated every new word they learned. They celebrated every small improvement. They knew the value of progress because they had worked hard for it. Then I started noticing other advantages. Because I spoke more than one language, I could connect with more people. I could understand different cultures. I could access information from different parts of the world. I was not limited to one language anymore. It felt like opening a second door to the world. Imagine walking into a huge library with millions of books. Now imagine that half of those books are locked because you only know one language. Learning English is like finding the key that unlocks those doors. Suddenly you can read more, learn more, meet more people, discover more opportunities. That idea excited me. I also learned something that many beginners need to hear. Having an accent is not a problem. For a long time, I worried about my accent. I thought people would judge me. But then I started listening to successful people from around the world. Many of them had strong accents. Some sounded very different from native speakers. Yet they were confident. They were respected. They were successful. Their accent did not stop them. Their fear would have stopped them, but they refused to let fear win. That lesson was powerful. I stopped trying to sound perfect. I focused on being understood. And surprisingly, my English improved much faster. The more I practiced, the more confident I became. The more confident I became, the more opportunities I found. Looking back now, I can honestly say that learning English as a second language taught me much more than vocabulary and grammar. It taught me patience. It taught me discipline. It taught me confidence. It taught me how to keep moving forward even when progress felt slow. Most importantly, it taught me that what looks like a weakness today can become your greatest strength tomorrow. But even after learning this valuable lesson, I still had a major problem. I was making several mistakes that were slowing down my progress without me even realizing it. And once I discovered those mistakes, everything started changing much faster than I ever imagined. Chapter 3. Once I understood that English being my second language could actually become a strength, I felt excited and motivated. I was ready to improve faster than ever before. I believed that success was just around the corner. But then something strange happened. Even though I was studying every day, My English was not improving as quickly as I expected. I was spending hours learning, yet I still struggled to speak. I still felt nervous during conversations. I still forgot words that I had studied only a few days earlier. At first, I thought maybe I was not smart enough. Maybe English was simply too difficult for me. But then I realized the problem was not my ability. The problem was the mistakes I was making without even knowing it. And trust me, these are the same mistakes that stop thousands of English learners from becoming fluent. The first mistake I made was something almost every beginner does. I believed that learning more words would solve everything. Every day I downloaded vocabulary lists. I memorized 20, 30, sometimes even 50 new words. I filled notebooks with definitions. I tested myself constantly. It felt productive. It felt like I was making progress. But when someone asked me a simple question in English, my mind went blank. I knew hundreds of words, but I could not use them naturally. One day I realized something important. Knowing words is not the same as speaking English. A football player does not become great by reading about football. They become great by playing. English works the same way. You must use the language, not just study it. The second mistake was even worse. I was obsessed with grammar. Every time I wanted to say something, I stopped and thought about rules. Is this the correct tense? Should I use this preposition? Is my sentence perfect? By the time I finished thinking, the conversation had already moved on. I was treating English like a school exam instead of a communication tool. Then I noticed something surprising. Many fluent speakers made small grammar mistakes when they talked quickly, yet they communicated confidently. That was when I understood that communication comes first. Perfection comes later. The third mistake was fear. Fear became my biggest enemy. I was afraid of making mistakes. I was afraid people would laugh at me. I was afraid my pronunciation sounded strange. I remember one day when I had the opportunity to speak English with someone online. I was excited all day. But when the moment arrived, I became nervous. My heart started racing. My palms became sweaty. Instead of speaking, I stayed silent. After the conversation ended, I felt disappointed in myself. Not because my English was bad, but because I never gave myself a chance to try. That day taught me an important lesson. Fear grows when you avoid it. Confidence grows when you face it. Then there was another mistake that nearly destroyed my motivation. I constantly compared myself to fluent speakers. I would watch YouTube videos and think, why can't I speak like that? I would listen to native speakers and feel discouraged. What I failed to realize was that I was comparing my beginning to someone else's years of experience. It was not fair. Imagine planting a seed today and becoming upset because it is not a tree tomorrow. Learning English takes time. Growth happens gradually. Every fluent speaker was once a beginner who struggled with simple sentences. Another mistake I made was spending too much time learning and not enough time practicing. I watched endless videos about how to learn English. I read articles. I searched for new methods every week. I was learning about learning instead of actually learning. One evening I asked myself a difficult question. How many hours did I spend speaking English this week? The answer shocked me. Almost none. I had spent dozens of hours studying, but very little time using the language. That realization changed everything. From that moment forward, I focused more on action than information. Slowly, I started correcting these mistakes. I stopped trying to memorize thousands of words. I started using the words I already knew. I stopped worrying about perfect grammar. I focused on expressing my ideas. I stopped comparing myself to others. I compared myself to the person I was yesterday. Most importantly, I stopped waiting for confidence before speaking. I started speaking first and allowed confidence to follow. And something incredible happened. My English began improving faster than ever before. The journey suddenly felt easier and more enjoyable. But the biggest breakthrough was still ahead of me. Because after removing these mistakes, I finally discovered a set of daily habits that completely transformed my English and changed my life forever. Chapter 4. After discovering the mistakes that were slowing down my progress, I finally felt like I was moving in the right direction. But knowing what not to do was only half the battle. I still needed to know what actually worked. I needed a system. I needed habits that I could follow every day. The truth is that I did not become better at English because of one magic trick. I improved because of small daily habits that completely changed the way I learned. At first, these habits seemed too simple. In fact, they seemed so simple that I almost ignored them. But over time, they became the foundation of everything. The first habit was talking to myself in English. I know it sounds strange. When I first started doing it, I felt a little silly. I would walk around my room and describe everything I was doing. If I was making breakfast, I would say, "I am making breakfast. I am cutting bread. I am making coffee." If I was walking outside, I would say, "The weather is nice today. I can see cars on the road. People are walking to work." Nobody could hear me. Nobody could judge me. It was like having a private English classroom available 24 hours a day. After a few weeks, something incredible happened. English words started appearing in my mind naturally. I was no longer translating every thought from my native language. The second habit was reading simple English stories. Before this, I tried reading difficult books because I thought difficult material would help me learn faster. I was wrong. Every page felt frustrating. I spent more time using a dictionary than actually reading. Then I switched to easy stories written for learners. Suddenly reading became enjoyable. I could understand most of the story. I could follow the characters. I could learn vocabulary and context. Every day I read for 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes slowly improved my vocabulary, grammar, and confidence without feeling like hard work. The third habit was listening to English every single day. At first, I could barely understand anything. Native speakers sounded too fast. It felt impossible. But I made a promise to myself. I would listen every day, no matter how much I understood. Sometimes I listened while walking. Sometimes while cleaning my room. Sometimes while exercising. Some days I understood only a few words. Other days I understood entire sentences. Slowly my ears adjusted to the language. One day I noticed that I was understanding conversations that once seemed impossible. That moment felt amazing. The fourth habit was something called shadowing. This habit changed my pronunciation dramatically. Here's what I did. I listened to a short sentence spoken by a native speaker. Then I immediately repeated it. I copied the pronunciation, the rhythm, and even the emotion. At first I sounded terrible, but I kept practicing. One sentence became 10 sentences. 10 sentences became 100. After a few months, my speech became smoother and more natural. People started understanding me more easily. The fifth habit was learning phrases instead of individual words. Before this, I would memorize single words like opportunity, confidence, and success. The problem was that I often forgot how to use them. Then I started learning complete phrases. Instead of learning the word confidence, I learned the phrase, I feel more confident every day. Instead of learning the word opportunity, I learned, this is a great opportunity for me. This simple change helped me speak much more naturally. Another habit that helped me tremendously was keeping a daily journal in English. Every night before going to bed, I wrote a few sentences about my day. At first, my writing was very simple. Today, I worked. Today, I watched a movie. Today, I practiced English. But week after week, my sentences became longer and better. My journal became proof that I was improving. On difficult days, I could look back and see how far I had come. The most important habit of all was consistency. I stopped looking for shortcuts. I stopped searching for secret methods. Instead, I focused on showing up every single day. Some days I felt motivated. Some days I felt tired. Some days I felt frustrated. But I continued anyway. Even if I only practiced for 15 minutes, I made sure I did something. Looking back now, I realize that these small habits changed much more than my English. They changed my mindset. They taught me patience. They taught me discipline. They taught me that success is built one day at a time. My English was improving faster than ever before. I felt more confident. I felt more comfortable. I felt more prepared. But there was still one challenge standing between me and true fluency. It was a challenge that almost every English learner faces. It was the fear of speaking English in front of other people. And overcoming that fear would become one of the most important moments of my entire journey. Chapter 5. Even though my English was improving every day, there was still one problem that refused to disappear. It was not grammar. It was not vocabulary. It was not pronunciation. It was fear. The fear of speaking English in front of other people. If you are learning English right now, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You study for hours. You understand lessons. You learn new words. But the moment someone says, "Can you speak English?" your mind suddenly becomes empty. Your heart starts beating faster. Your hands feel nervous. And all the English you know seems to disappear. That was exactly how I felt. I remember one day when I finally had the chance to join an online English conversation group. I had been preparing for weeks. Every day I practiced sentences. Every day I learned new expressions. I told myself that I was ready. But when the meeting started and people began introducing themselves, fear took control of me. One by one, people spoke confidently. Then it was my turn. The host smiled and said, "Please tell us a little about yourself." It was a simple question. I had practiced it many times before, but suddenly my mind froze. I could feel everyone waiting for my answer. My heart was racing. I wanted to speak, but the words would not come out. Finally, I managed to say a few short sentences. My voice sounded nervous. My pronunciation was not perfect. When I finished speaking, I felt embarrassed. I thought everyone would judge me. I thought they would notice every mistake. But then something surprising happened. Nobody laughed. Nobody criticized me. In fact, several people smiled and encouraged me. One person even said, "Your English is better than you think." That simple sentence stayed with me for days. It made me realize something important. Most people are too busy thinking about themselves to focus on your mistakes. The fear existed mostly inside my own mind. After that experience, I made a decision. I would stop running away from fear. Instead, I would face it. Every day I challenged myself to speak a little more English. Some days I spoke to people online. Some days I recorded my voice and listened to it. Some days I stood in front of a mirror and practiced conversations. At first it felt uncomfortable. I made mistakes constantly. Sometimes I forgot words. Sometimes I used the wrong grammar. Sometimes my pronunciation sounded strange. But I kept going. Then one day something funny happened. I was talking with another English learner online. During our conversation, I accidentally used the wrong word. Instead of saying one thing, I said something completely different. For a second, I felt embarrassed. Then we both started laughing. That moment taught me another valuable lesson. Mistakes are not disasters. They are part of learning. Every mistake teaches you something new. Every mistake brings you one step closer to fluency. From that day forward, I stopped treating mistakes like enemies. I started treating them like teachers. The more mistakes I made, the more I learned. Slowly, my confidence began growing. I noticed that conversations were becoming easier. I no longer spent 10 seconds thinking before every sentence. I no longer worried about every tiny grammar rule. Instead, I focused on communicating my ideas. And surprisingly, people understood me. Then came a moment I will never forget. One evening, I joined a discussion with several English speakers from different countries. The conversation lasted nearly an hour. We talked about our goals, our hobbies, and our daily lives. Something felt different that day. I was not constantly translating in my head. I was not panicking every time I spoke. I was simply having a conversation. When the discussion ended, I sat quietly for a moment and smiled. It was the first time I truly felt confident speaking English. Not perfect, not fluent like a native speaker, but confident. And that confidence changed everything. I finally understood that fluency is not about speaking without mistakes. Fluency is about expressing yourself without fear. The moment you stop being afraid, your English begins to grow much faster. Looking back now, I realize that fear was never my biggest problem. My biggest problem was believing that fear should disappear before I started speaking. The truth is the opposite. You speak first, and then confidence follows. You take action first, and then fear becomes smaller. That lesson transformed my entire journey. And once I learned it, something incredible started happening. Opportunities that once seemed impossible suddenly became real. Doors began opening. New possibilities appeared. And in the final stage of my journey, I discovered how English could completely transform not only my communication skills, but my entire future. Chapter 6. After overcoming my fear of speaking English, I thought the hardest part of the journey was over. I was finally able to have conversations. I could understand much more than before. I felt confident. But what happened next surprised me even more. For the first time in my life, I started seeing opportunities that I had never noticed before. It was like someone had opened a new door, and suddenly I could see an entirely different world waiting on the other side. One evening, I was browsing job opportunities online when I noticed something interesting. Many of the positions that offered higher salaries required English. Some of them were remote jobs. Some allowed people to work with international teams. Some were opportunities I had ignored in the past because I believed my English was not good enough. But now things were different. Instead of scrolling past them, I started reading the requirements carefully. For the first time, I could actually understand most of what I was reading. That moment felt powerful. A few months earlier, those same job descriptions looked impossible. Now they looked like possibilities. Then something happened that I will never forget. I applied for a position that I would never have considered before. When I submitted my application, I felt nervous. Part of me still doubted myself. Part of me still remembered the person who was afraid to speak English. But another part of me knew how much progress I had made. A few days later, I received an email inviting me to an interview. I stared at the screen for several seconds. I could hardly believe it. The opportunity I had dreamed about was finally in front of me. On the day of the interview, I was nervous, but this time it was different. Months ago, nervousness would have stopped me. Now nervousness simply reminded me that I cared about the opportunity. The interviewer asked questions in English. I listened carefully. I answered confidently. I was not perfect. I made a few small mistakes. But I communicated clearly. I shared my ideas. I showed my personality. Most importantly, I did not let fear control me. When the interview ended, I felt proud of myself regardless of the outcome, because I knew I had done something that once seemed impossible. A week later, I received the news. I got the opportunity. I still remember sitting quietly and smiling. It was not just about the job. It was not just about money. It was proof that all the hours of practice had been worth it. Every difficult day, every mistake, every moment of frustration, every time I wanted to quit. It had all led to this moment. But the biggest surprise was not the opportunity itself. The biggest surprise was who I had become during the journey. English had changed much more than my ability to communicate. It had changed my confidence. It had changed my mindset. It had taught me discipline. It had shown me that I was capable of learning difficult things if I stayed consistent. Then I started noticing changes in other areas of my life. I could watch educational videos from around the world. I could read books that were previously unavailable to me. I could connect with people from different countries. I could learn directly from experts. Every day felt like an opportunity to grow. The world suddenly seemed much bigger than before. That is when I realized something important. Learning English is not only about language, it is about possibilities. It is about giving yourself access to opportunities that might otherwise remain closed. It is about building a future with more choices. And the best part is that you do not need to be a genius to achieve it. You do not need perfect grammar. You do not need an expensive course. You do not need special talent. What you need is consistency. You need patience. You need the courage to keep going even when progress feels slow. Right now, there are millions of people around the world who once struggled with English just like you. Many of them are now living their dreams because they refuse to give up. The only difference between them and those who quit is that they kept moving forward one day at a time. So if you are watching this video and thinking, "My English is not good enough," I want you to remember something. Every fluent speaker started exactly where you are now. Every confident speaker once felt nervous. Every success story began with a beginner who decided to take the first step. Your journey is not over. In many ways, it is just beginning. 1 year from now, you could still be making excuses, or you could be speaking English with confidence and enjoying opportunities you cannot even imagine today. The choice is yours. Start today. Practice every day. Believe in yourself. Because English may be your second language, but it could become one of the greatest tools you ever use to change your life.